In my last video, you have heard me about the nature and the psychosocial consequences of modern Western psychology. In this video, I am going to talk about the wisdom and message of ancient Vedas of India, and I feel that this is quite relevant and warranted at this present moment of global crisis of our very existence on this planet. Now let us consider the origin of Vedic thought. Our ancient man of antiquity, when exposed to the vivid expressions and ramifications of nature, exhibited three kinds of responses. Firstly, his response in terms of instinct and fears gave rise to the birth of a multitude of myths and superstitions. His emotional response to the unknown led to his faith in an all-powerful God out there externally. The rise of various organized religions of the world was the outcome. His second response was that of reverence, awe, and adoration. It enabled him to pursue the path of self-denial and the act of surrendering his ego to an almighty being who is benevolent, all-loving, all-knowing, all-powerful, all-encompassing, and ever-existing. The path of unconditional devotion and love was the aftermath of his self-transcendence, irrespective of the religious boundaries. Unfortunately, the path of organized religions degenerated into cult, dogma, fanaticism, and fundamentalism. Sectarianism, intolerance, and violence were on the ascent. The single reason for this is the pursuit of religion as an empty slogan without universality, compassion, and devotion. The third type of response was intellectual in kind. It was characterized by observation, logic, and reason that it evolved into scientific thinking and tradition. The scientific inquiry into reality was restricted to the analysis of sense-perceptible world only. Our modern scientific community has a few self-defeating traits which mar their ability to pierce the unknown. One of them is their built-in prejudice and reluctance to accept consciousness as the everlasting basis of all the operations and interactions in nature. We have to understand that prejudice and superstition are not only the domain of pseudo-religion but also can erode the scientific query. The callous disregard of the scientists regarding the intentions of their research work and a pathological curiosity to know without an iota of concern to the consequences of their discoveries is an unfortunate development. The worst trait among some of them is to consider the ancient human beings as primitive, ignorant, and uncivilized. This misguided scientific fraternity considers intellect and knowledge as their jealously guarded possessions. However, the pioneers of modern physics are an exception to these traits. What is lacking in the current scientific community is the paucity of an intrinsic moral instinct, which is called as dharma. Our scientists do not seem to subscribe to the Vedic aspiration, loka samastha sukhino bhavantu, which means let all the living beings in all the worlds be happy. Their brains took precedence over their hearts. The consequence of this has been grim and alarming. Our morally bankrupt political leaders hijacked the discoveries of scientists and used them to aggrandize themselves and to manufacture the destructive weapons which can annihilate our earth at once. In addition to these responses, there was a unique response with a childlike innocence, purity of heart, and adoration of nature. This response transcended reason, logic, and the intellectual gymnasium. This was his intuition. a supra-rational faculty of mind, enabling him to experience the reality directly without sense perception and conceptual models. With purity and compassion in their hearts, their sharp intellect and intuition could unravel the mysteries of the unknown. The ancient Vedic seers and the modern masters of consciousness belong to this category. In the transcendental experience of their enlightenment, they discovered their own identity with the Supreme Consciousness. These enlightened masters are benevolent beacons of our society. Vedic rishis experienced the state of superconsciousness and declared that it is an all-time constant. It is uncaused and a self-existent primary reality, which in Vedic terms is Swayambhu, self-existent. What we call mind, energy, and matter are the ever-changing variables which rise and fall in this vibrant superconsciousness like waves in the ocean. The following sloka of Sri Shankaracharya in Brahma Jnanavali is a succinct. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya Jivo Brahmaiva Naparaha. It means that superconsciousness or Brahma is real and the world is conditional, shadowy and apparent. Jiva, the wave, is non-different from Brahma, the ocean. Therefore, Vedic thought is beyond the whims and fancies of Western psychology. It would be apt to term the Vedic approach as Atma Vidya rather than Indian psychology. Now let's consider Vedic epistemology. Modern Western psychology pursued a partisan and sectarian methodology to comprehend mind and the behavior and made a mess of everything. On the contrary, Vedic seers were crystal clear and pursuant in moving ahead towards their goal. Psychological approach is reductionist, whereas Vedic seers' path was holistic. They decided to comprehend the whole, which is consciousness, not only the part which is mind. It is the whole which encompasses all the suboptimal states of consciousness and their corresponding realities within itself.